Hi, I'm Laurence Parker-Brown. Welcome to the Inside Network. Welcome to this In-Depth. We're joined by the head of investor distribution at KeyInvest, Tom Huntley.
Thanks for having me, Laurence.
My pleasure. So KeyInvest, it's got a rich history, much longer than many other asset managers and institutions in Australia, but it might be lesser known to some of our audience. Could you give us a bit of a story and a little bit about the services you offer at KeyInvest?
Absolutely. So it does, Laurence. We're actually in our 147th year of existence. For the main part, we were known as IFSA in the sort of last 15 years, KeyInvest. So we have been around for a long time. My role at KeyInvest is head of investor distribution. That's a national role. So I have the pleasure and privilege of traveling across this beautiful country and catching up with the wonderful advisors and their support staff to understand the products and services we offer and help them use it. In terms of what we offer, we've got an investment bond called the KeyInvest Life Events Bond and a funeral bond simply named the KeyInvest Funeral Bond. And in the not too distant future, we're going to step into the role of in the fund manager space ourselves, which is interesting and something a little bit different, namely in the private credit space. We are an investor in the space ourselves, so we're going to look to impart our expertise and experience in that space and make a public offering and something a bit innovative to what is currently on offer. So yeah, keep your eyes and ears open for that.
Well, Tom, one of the beauties of our space is that regulations are never static. They evolve and it keeps everyone on their toes. It has questions for clients and for advisors that want to understand potential tax changes, Division 296. What are some of the questions that you're fielding? Is this creating more awareness that people maybe need to look outside of super for some of their investments?
We're getting, not the door knocked down, we're getting a lot of interest and keenness, whereas maybe in the past, not so much because of these constant changes and tinkering and mentions. Div 296 is proposed as we speak, but what it's done is it's actually forced people to think about what are the alternative solutions out there, and investment bonds is certainly one of those. Superannuation is the preeminent way to save, absolutely, but it is designed to fund retirement, and it has become a wealth transfer mechanism, which the government isn't as happy about. So, they've started with defining the definition of super, that it is to fund retirement, and they've put the word in there, dignified rather than extravagant. So that's sort of given you an indication of where they're leaning to. And Div 296, or the proposed Div 296, is an extension of this, where they're looking to actually pare back some of the concessional tax earnings. They've chosen $3 million. Maybe that's a sign of what they think is enough to live a dignified retirement. So we're certainly off the back of that, seeing investment bonds and an interest in them coming up. We see two areas where that really plays out. One, you've got more than $3 million above super. You don't want to pay the tax. You want to avoid it. If you can take your money out of super, maybe an investment bond is the next best solution. We certainly think it sits at the table as a consideration. I think what people also forget about is you've got a lot of people that haven't got $3 million yet, but they're actually going to be impacted by it with little effort. The cap's not indexed. And so we also see that as a massive opportunity, and investment bonds as a consideration. Maybe those people pare back some of their contributions to super. They've got more discretionary income. Where does it go next? We think investment bonds have a strong part to play.
So Tom, time for the hardest question of today. I recognize that it's not something that you're crafting and taking through Parliament, but what is the status of Division 296 and these changes? I'm sure that a lot of advisors listening would like to know because their clients are curious when it will happen, if at all.
Yes, I know a number of us are hoping it doesn't get through. And I think as it stands at the moment, it's unlikely to get through before the upcoming election. Through no fault of the Labor government, they've tried multiple times, and I'll touch on that shortly. So we don't have any more sitting days left of Parliament. We've got the budget next week and the election's likely to be in May. So it's unlikely that they're going to be able to sneak it through before, but they've indicated that they're going to take it as a policy to the election. So that sort of cements it, because it sort of came out post them coming in power last time. So it's pending. It's passed through the House of Representatives. Labor has the balance of power there, so it got through quite easily. But the Senate is where they don't have the balance of power. They've relied not on themselves, but just the Greens and 3 independent senators. That's how many people they needed to get it across the line. They've wooed the Greens. They've tried to woo some of the 3 independent senators. We think they've probably got one, but Tammy Tyrrell, a senator in Tasmania, has to this point denied the vote. They actually tried to sneak it in attached to the credit and debit surcharge ban to woo her vote and others, and it didn't get across the line. So we await the election and a result to see how it plays out. In terms of the consequences, or the implications, it's controversial by itself, but there's elements inside it that are really controversial. The $3 million cap isn't indexed, so whilst that might not capture people now, or many people, it will. Yeah, the taxation of unrealised gains is something pretty much unheard of in Australia, so that's caused a lot of anger and ire. Defined benefit pensions, no defined benefit pension is the same. There's a lot of ambiguity around that, and then how that feeds through into senior public servants and politicians themselves. If you read the detail, they potentially could escape it, which, the good old people like ourselves don't understand how that could possibly play out. And then you've got judicial pensions, which are covered in the Constitution, also becoming wrapped up in it. So there's a lot of controversy, should we say. So let's see how it plays out, and also if changes are made. To this point, they haven't wanted to make any changes. So in terms of where investment bonds have a part to play, they're actually a very similar structure to superannuation. They're tax paid. Superannuation in the main part is a tax paid structure, albeit investment bonds are taxed at a maximum of 30. They also have similar powers in terms of the passage of wealth. In superannuation, you can nominate beneficiaries. In an investment bond, you can also nominate beneficiaries. Unlike super, you're not limited to next of kin, financial dependent spouses. You can actually nominate whoever you want. So I can nominate you, Laurence, on my own investment bond. And interestingly, yeah, absolutely. And no matter who I nominate in my investment bond, the implications are always the same. The people that you nominate, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a person, it can be a company, trust, a charity, always receive those funds tax paid. So there's no additional consequence from a tax perspective, which can be really, really powerful.
So a lot of advisors are familiar with investment bonds, but for those that are less so, Tom, alongside the short-term trigger of changes to potential superannuation, there's also the broader meta trends and societal change. So one is that the intergenerational wealth transfer, that's looming large. I think many practices are already conscious of it. Yeah. What role can investment bonds play in supporting those sorts of clients?
Absolutely, Laurence. There's a tidal wave of wealth set to pass from the baby boomers to the younger generations over the next 20 or so years. In fact, it's already begun. I think superannuation and the way we invest, the decisions we make about investing, it's often about the tax effective way now, and I get that 100%. But sometimes we don't place as much emphasis around when that asset does transfer in the future, what the tax impacts could be. Investment bonds are a great tax effective way to save, depending on client circumstances along the way. But when it comes to the asset transfer at a future point, that's really where they come to their fore. You can actually assign your policy. So you can assign your policy to someone else, and that also doesn't create a tax event. So investment bonds are covered under the Life Insurance Act of 1995. And it's nice because the Life Insurance Act hasn't to this point, and I probably jinxed it, but doesn't get tinkered with. So it gives you a lot of certainty around that future transfer. People also, when it comes to superannuation, but when the money is transferred to a beneficiary, it's transferred as a lump sum. With the significant wealth at play, those lump sums are going to be increasingly larger amounts. And whilst people might want to give it to the next of kin, they don't necessarily want to give it all at once. So if you use super, and when it comes with superannuation, beneficiaries will get that full amount. So the way to avoid that would be to put it back through your estate, but that makes it open to potential contest and challenge, which people are wanting to avoid. So investment bonds actually provide a great way. The beneficiaries work exactly the same way. They can help, in most cases, avoid that estate contest. And you can actually put some restrictions when it does transfer to access the capital. So you can transfer funds to, say, your son or daughter, but potentially you don't want to give them that full amount at once. Maybe they're a vulnerable beneficiary. Maybe they're prone to fritter the money. You can actually put restrictions on access. You can say, well, look, Laurence, you're only going to get 30 grand will be able to access 30 grand of the policy for the first 5 years. And after that, it's all yours. So they can be really powerful ways to transfer wealth, and they create flexibility and control features that you don't necessarily get through other assets of investment structures.
Let's just pick up on that, Tom, because I think for advisors that work with vulnerable parties that are part of a client's story, with mental health issues, addiction, and all sorts of challenges that families are going through, investment bonds are quite powerful, not only on a tax level, but also that control. Could you flesh out some of the stories that you're hearing?
Absolutely, Laurence. So, the family dynamic is increasingly complex these days. Maybe the stresses of life are creating that, but I think that it's reported that 1 in 4 marriages that happen these days is one of the members of that couple is marrying for the second time at least. So they might bring with them kids from other partners. So when it comes to the estate transfer, the wealth transfer at a future point, there's a number of different considerations. You might want to give it to child 1, but not child 2 or 3. And what happens if spouse gets it first? There's so many dynamics. And as we've talked about, the intergenerational wealth transfer, the amount that's set to pass is significant. So even the simple family structures, you're starting to see siblings who are best of friends squabble over amounts they're going to receive because they want their fair share. Sadly, money does corrupt in some cases. We're seeing a massive increase in the need and want to have conversations around how investment bonds can fit in that space, and they can do it in a number of ways. So yeah, the conversations I'm having start on that tax side, but then they actually go into the estate planning, and that's when eyes really open, when people realise, well, I didn't know that investment bonds can help in that way.
It's a deeply relevant vehicle, so I hope any advisors that would like to learn more do reach out to Tom, and I hope this has been helpful.
Thanks, Lana. Thanks for having me.